Well, hey everybody, it's Joey, the Next Gen Pastor here at Advent, and welcome to another week of the Sermon on the Mount small groups. Today we're going to be talking about enemies, so it's going to be a good time. Matthew chapter 5, verse 38 to 47 says this. Jesus says, "You have heard that it was said, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you and take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your Father in heaven. If you love those who love you, what reward will you get? Are not even the tax collectors doing that? And if you greet only your own people, what are you doing more than others? Do not even pagans do that?" So in reading this passage, I see 6 really important things. I'm going to go in depth on a few of them, and you can go in depth on the rest of them. But the 6 things that I see here are: first, turn the other cheek, give your shirt and coat, go the extra mile, love and pray for those who persecute you. And then Jesus finishes with 2 questions, where he basically says, are you any better than a tax collector? And are you any better than a pagan? Now, if you're anything like me, I would like to say, and you probably would say, of course I'm better than a tax collector. I don't like paying taxes. Or you'd say, of course I'm better than a pagan. I love and follow Jesus. Of course, they go without saying. I'm definitely better than those people. But Jesus poses it in a way that says it's not actually so much about the tax collector and the pagan as a person, but more of what they do in terms of loving the people around them. And if we are only loving people in the way that they're loving people, then by Jesus' standard, we aren't better than those two. So right off the bat, Jesus introduces the idea of turning the other cheek. And as you read this passage about turn the other cheek and about if somebody sues you and takes your shirt, give them your coat, and don't just go 1 mile, go the 2 miles. If you read this without any sort of context, it would be really easy to see that, or say that Jesus is pro-abuse and pro-evil and people treating you poorly, that he is pro those things. Maybe there is a case for that if you intentionally misunderstand what the passage is saying. When Jesus talks about turn the other cheek, in my opinion, this is a phrase that gets misused pretty often. Essentially what Jesus is saying is, back in ancient Israel, back in the day when Jesus was in Israel, slapping somebody with a forward hand slap or a backhand slap both held their own context. Now, maybe this will blow your mind, maybe this won't, but by backhand slapping somebody back in ancient Israel, it was not considered assault. Hear what I just said. Here in Memphis, in the United States, in the 21st century, if you slap somebody with your palm or the back of your hand, it doesn't matter. It's assault, it's battery, it's domestic violence. You go to jail. It's not a good thing. In ancient Israel, if you got slapped, it was not assault. It was just a personal insult. And this is important for why Jesus gives the context. But basically, if you were to get backhand slapped, it was somebody saying, as the aggressor, they were saying, you are less than I am, you are less human, I am taking dignity away from you. You're a second-rate, second-class citizen, and that's all you are, and that's all you'll ever be. We are not equal. It was a personal and forceful insult. That's what a backhanded slap would mean. So as the passage says, if anyone slaps you on the right cheek, it is because in a right-handed world, if you get backhand slapped, it's going to slap you on the right cheek. Go ahead, turn to the person next to you, and I'm just kidding, don't do that. But you can put your hand out in front of you and you can kind of picture this, right? So a backhand slap. Well, Jesus then says, turn to them the other cheek also. Now again, somebody could read this and say, this is abuse, this is exploitation, this is pain, this is aggressive. That's not Jesus. Well, what he's saying, because again, the context in Israel at this time, if you were to get backhand slapped on your right cheek, your head turns to the left. He says, turn to them the other cheek. So now you expose your left cheek. In order for the aggressor to slap you again out of their anger or whatever it is, in order for them to slap you again, they can't backhand slap you. It has to be an open palm, open-faced slap. And the reason this is important is because in ancient Israel, an open palm-faced slap means specifically that you are my equal. Now, it's not them saying like, oh, you and I are equal, we're brothers, we're sisters, so bam, 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 open face. What it means is if you're to slap somebody, you only do that to somebody in ancient Israel if you're humanizing them, if you're giving them dignity. You would never slap somebody that is beneath you with an open-faced slap. You would never, ever humanize somebody in that way. You would only undignify somebody with a backhand slap. And so Jesus says, turn to them the other cheek because it's going to force them to either stop hurting you or to dignify you. And it was this creative way that Jesus gave his disciples and anybody else listening a way to diffuse and challenge the aggressor. It's kind of the same thing with the rest of the passage about giving over your shirt, handing over your coat. Back in ancient Israel, you had an inalienable right, an irrevocable right to your outer cloak, which was just this interesting part of the Hebrew Mosaic law that we would never think about suing somebody over. You're going to spend way more money on a public defender or a lawyer to represent you for a $40 coat. But back in Hebrew Mosaic law in ancient Israel, you had this inalienable, that's a hard word to say, inalienable right to your coat. When Jesus said, if they're going to take your shirt, hand over your coat also. Don't get wrapped up in the legal stuff. Be willing to give that away to your aggressor because it'll change how the aggressor treats you. And it's the same thing with if anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2. Back in the day, Romans had rule over you and they could force you to carry their luggage up to 1 mile. And Jesus says, don't fight against it. Be ready for that 1 mile and be willing to give them 2 because it'll transform your aggressor. And so then we get to the bottom of the passage and Jesus talks about, you've heard that it was said, you got to love your neighbor and pray for your enemy, pray for those who persecute you. He's asking this question of, are you any better than what the tax collectors do? If you're only loving the people that are easy to love, if you're only greeting the people who are in your inner circle, but when new people enter in and you kind of give the little look and say, I don't think that person's supposed to be here. I don't want to talk to that person. They don't look like me. They don't sound like me. Maybe they're not Presbyterians. Oh, I'm judging them because they went up to the communion table, but I know what they did yesterday. If we are treating people like this and then they fall into that enemy category, we are no better than a tax collector or a pagan. And Jesus is bringing people together into the Sermon on the Mount sermon to say everything that you've known that has looked like this is going to now turn on its head like this in my kingdom. And if you want to be part of it, you need to learn to change everything you've known to an upside down kingdom. And so today, as you go through this passage and you talk about this with your small group, this is a heart check, not only for you, but for me, for all of us in Jesus' kingdom. The question that I'll ask you is, how are you doing in practicing the way of Jesus by loving your enemy? The person who makes you really angry, the person who divorced you, the person you can't stand to be around, the person who maybe you think deserves hatred from you because of the ways that they have hurt you. Jesus is asking, how well are you loving them? When they're thirsty, do you give them water? When they're hungry, do you feed them? And do you pray for them? Because if you don't, you are no better than a tax collector and a pagan. And for all of us here at Advent, all of us here in Jesus' kingdom, those two categories of people are not people that he wants us to be close to. We need to be people who represent who Jesus is and the exact kind of love that he's asking us to share with those around us, especially your enemy. Well, thank you for going on this journey with us through the Sermon on the Mount. And my hope for you is that you will dig deep today as we learn about what it means to love your enemies.